Welcome back to another episode of Jacket Sports Weekly. It was not a good week for Jacket Sports, Hugh.
Yeah, not very good as the men's and women's basketball team still looking for a win. The wrestling team goes 1-1, but Riley, Aubrey Wingert going to nationals for women's cross country.
I'm Riley Holsinger.
And I'm Hugh O'Neill.
And you're watching Jacket Sports Weekly. The Waynesburg University football team could not get it done against W&J on Saturday. The team lost 50-14, and they were shut out for most of the game until about the middle of the fourth quarter when Nick Moretti scored a touchdown, and then late into the fourth quarter when Chad Walker scored a touchdown. It just was not a great game, Hugh, and it wasn't a great season for the Yellow Jackets.
No, Riley, and coming from that game against Case Western, there was a lot of up and up. Waynesburg losing only by 3 to one of the best teams in Division III. So there was momentum, and many people may have thought, okay, if Waynesburg does this against Case, they can do this easily against W&J, who's having a down year. However, that obviously wasn't the case. It was 35-0 at the half, and quarterback problems was one of the main issues for Waynesburg, is using 3 quarterbacks because of injuries. And Caden Roberts, the transfer, who is the punter, also played quarterback. He was 13 of 27, 124 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. And so that was good for him, but obviously when you go to your third-string quarterback, it's like the Steelers. You obviously don't want that. But some good things from Justin Flack, Nick Moretti, and Chad Walker both getting a touchdown in their final games as Yellow Jackets. Moretti, 9 receptions, 108 yards, and a touchdown. And then Ty Smith also had a pretty good game in his last game, adds a Yellow Jacket, 7 tackles, 2 tackles for loss.
Yeah, and this rushing defense didn't really help out the Yellow Jackets because they gave up 282 yards on the ground once more. And that was a big issue for this team all year because they could not stop the run. And then they could not convert on third down either, only going 3 for 17 on third down. But the Waynesburg University football team, they have great things to look forward to in the future. Justin Flack is definitely one of those pieces, 88 yards on the ground. He's just going to be somebody that this team could rely on a ton heading into his last 3 years of college. But now moving over to wrestling, Hugh, Waynesburg went 1-1 at the Waynesburg Duels on Saturday. What did you notice from the Duels?
So Waynesburg beat Johns Hopkins 32-14. However, what I want to touch on, that may look like a sizable margin. However, Waynesburg had 3 forfeits, so that's 18 points. If you take away 18 from 32, some good calm math right there, it's 14. So if you take away the 14 to 18, it's 14-14. So that's a tie. And that's obviously not what you want, as Johns Hopkins not having wrestlers in those 3 weight classes. So do you really look at it as a win if you're Waynesburg?
I mean, definitely, because when you look at the team score, Waynesburg did win.
I mean, yeah, but like coaching-wise.
Coaching-wise, no, but at the same time, the Yellow Jackets did win 4 out of the 7 matches that were wrestled, because we saw Jay Sky, Colby Morris, Rocky McGeary, and Caleb Baxter come away with victories there. But the biggest thing is bonus points, because coming into that Messiah match, that was the main reason why Waynesburg lost, but Waynesburg was able to hang in there with a team that's tough every single year in Messiah, and they were able to win 4 matches out of that duel. But even Coach Headley said that bonus points were the main reason why they lost.
Yeah, they fell behind 18-0, so obviously bonus points went against them, not in their favor to start out the match against Messiah. But then you mentioned Colby Morris got a win, being able to stay undefeated at 157, and then Zach Mackel got a pin at 165. Adam Rigney, 12-7 victory at 197, and then Rocky McGeary, a 13-2 win. The main thing there, unfortunately, is Caleb Baxter was up 8-3, and then he dealt with a shoulder problem, and then he got pinned, and that was really the changing point of that match.
Yeah, and Caleb Baxter, he's not wrestling 100% right now. It's very noticeable. I know he's going through some pains right now, but it was great to see Zach Mackel, who has so much potential on this team. He knocked off an All-American and Kevin Edwards, somebody who's been nationally ranked and who's just been tough. as an opponent for Mackle in the past. So that was very encouraging, especially with that whole Messiah match, because I didn't really expect Waynesburg to come away with a victory in that match, but pulling 4 matches out of that was very encouraging. And then moving on, Waynesburg will have Shippensburg on Wednesday. So weights are going to be a major thing to keep under control. I know weights were a hard thing for this team to control throughout the year with Jay Sky missing weight during the W&J Invitational. We haven't seen Josh Kuslock yet because of weight. So that's something to watch for. And then they have another quick turnaround with the John Carroll Duels on Sunday, Hugh.
Yeah, so looking at this Shippensburg matchup that, like you mentioned, is on Wednesday, lost to Shippensburg 2 years ago, 31-10. And that was in 2017, as last year the match got canceled due to inclement weather. The match to watch for this match will be the heavyweight bout. Rocky McGeary against Derek Berberick. Now, Berberick lost to Jake Evans 4-2 2 years ago, and Jake Evans that year was the D3 national champion. So that's going to be a good match, as Berberick went to nationals, Division II nationals, as Shippensburg is a Division II school, went to nationals last year. So obviously that's going to be the biggest match that Rocky McGeary has had in college, and that'll be interesting to see how he is able to cope with that.
Yeah, and it's a Division II school, Shippensburg. That's going to be a hard matchup for Waynesburg. I don't think the team's going to go in there and expect a win, but if they can pull a couple matches out of it, like how we saw with the Messiah match, it should be a good match. And then heading into the John Carroll Duels on Sunday, that's always a tough time. Last year it was very tough for Waynesburg, except they were able to pull away victories from Penn State Barron and Pitt Greensburg, but John Carroll was a very tough matchup for the team last year. So now, moving on to women's basketball, they lost on Tuesday to Hiram College, but there was a little bit of controversy because Hiram couldn't really arrive on time. They arrived about an hour and 45 minutes late to that game, Hugh. But what were some of the things that you could pull away from it?
Well, obviously, Brooke Fuller with 20 points and 11 rebounds, that's a positive. Andrew Arlovsky had 9.6 rebounds, and that was obviously good, but Waynesburg could not stop Elena Conroy. She had 7 3-pointers to go with her 35 points. So obviously they just couldn't stop her. And when you have a player that scores 35 points and they also dish the ball around, obviously that's just not good.
Yeah, and then we're going to hear more from the women's basketball team from Matthew Mansfield. But it's going to be hard because this team, they have a lot of young players on it, and they need to figure out what roles that these players are going to have, like Zoe Smith. She didn't have as good of a game shooting as she did in her first game, only going 2 for 8. And then Anika Dansby had 6 turnovers as the primary ball handler. And then Allie Delaney also added 4 turnovers as well. So that's not good when some of your newer players aren't doing as well as you expected them to early on, but they are going to have some growing pains. And then moving on to that men's basketball team, they went 0-2 this past weekend, Hugh. What did you take away from that?
Honestly, you go into that Allegheny, going into Meadville and playing Allegheny and John Carroll, you weren't really expecting wins out of that. That's just, Waynesburg plays a very strong non-conference schedule, so you're not really looking for wins. You're looking for improvement and how they can do to get better for PAC play coming up. Now, Popek scoring 16, that's good, and Alonzo with 9 in the first game. The team shot almost 50% for field goals. That's good. So that's one good takeaway. But then the Allegheny game, you can't complain about Brendan Smith scoring 32 points. That's obviously good. And then Isaiah Alonzo had 11 points and 11 rebounds. So that 6'10" frame obviously is going to help this team, and that's obviously a big positive.
Yeah, definitely. And Alonzo is one of those players that you want to keep your eye on throughout the season, because if he can get more rebounds than the other centers that he's paired up against, Waynesburg's going to have a good chance to win a lot of these tougher games, such as the Alleghenies and the John Carrolls. But in John Carroll, Matthew Popek, he didn't play as well as I would have liked to have seen him play, only going 5 for 18 shooting. Getting 16 points is good, but Popek is a main piece of this team, and they're going to live and die by him shooting, because if he's not shooting well, odds are the team's not really going to do as well. And then also going with that John Carroll game, Cam Auld led the team with 6 rebounds. I don't think Cam Auld is the person that you want on the team to lead you with rebounds, especially when you have a player like Isaiah Alonzo, who you mentioned is 6'10" and has a lot easier of a time pulling down boards than somebody else on this team.
Caleb Yager will talk to Cam Auld later in the show, And that's going to do it for our basketball talk, right?
That is going to do it. And then when we come back on Jacket Sports Weekly, Jacob Nicholas will have some more football talk with us. Stay tuned.
We're back here on JSW with football and cross country. First, we're going to start out with football with Jacob Nicholas. Jacob, obviously the team going 1-9. What good can you take out of this?
Well, you have some potential in some of the freshmen and sophomores on the team. Some guys getting some decent time this year. You got guys like Justin Flack, Mason Schrenker, a junior at quarterback, Justin Flack, a running back on the team. Dajay Crum stepping it up late in the season, a sophomore on the team, wide receiver. Then you got guys on defense that really had a key part on the team this year. Guys like Brett Hicks, a linebacker, sophomore. Luke Menges, defensive back, another sophomore. And Lucas Donnelly, a freshman defensive end. So you do have some guys coming back in some key positions that you can build off of and incite some competition on the team because they're returning, but you got guys that can come in and try to take that spot from them.
Now, Jacob, try and find some positivity for me here. Last season, Waynesburg went 4-6, which is a very good mark for Chris Smithley and company. Then this year, 1-9. And the team was returning most of its defense and all of its offensive stars. Now, most of them are going away because 5 of the defensive starters are leaving, 7 offensive starters are leaving, and 3 of them on the line. So just kind of find some positivity.
So I think when you look at it, you're trying to find the positivity. It's kind of a hard way to approach it. But I think what you're looking at here is a problem for Waynesburg, losing a lot of seniors. But problems are opportunities, right? So the opportunity here is for Coach Smithley. Coach Smithley can prove himself through his recruiting. What does his recruiting look like in the guys that are currently on the team? Did he recruit quality guys? We already know Justin Flack carried a lot of the weight of the offense this year. But when it comes to the offseason, when it comes to improving, when it comes to building up the team around you, what's the quality like inside guys like Justin Flack, like Mason Schrenker, like Dajay Crum? Are they going to help make guys around them better, make the rest of the team better? And then you got guys coming in next year, the freshmen that we don't even know about yet. You know, we're going to see the quality of Coach Smithley's recruiting there. See if he can build on the 1-9 record this season, have a better record next season, even though you're losing so many seniors off this team.
So you mentioned they're losing so many seniors now. You mentioned some of the guys who have stepped up this year. So looking forward to next year, how do you think this team's going to be?
I think they're going to struggle a little bit, losing a majority of their offensive line, and I'm of the firm belief that your offensive line is what wins football games. They control the game. You got guys like Alex Paulina, Kevin McClellan, Tanner Six. All those guys are graduating. They're all not going to be here next year. So again, what kind of offensive linemen are on the team that will develop and work hard over the offseason, and what kind of guys are going to be recruited and brought in? And if they don't step up, it's going to be trouble for the offense. An offense that already struggled a lot this year. So I think that may be a struggle, but I think there's definitely an opportunity there for growth. So.
Thanks, Jacob. So we got from very somber football to the up and up with some women's cross country, also with men's cross country, with Corey Fisher. Now Aubrey Wingert going to nationals. But Corey, talk to us a little bit about how regionals went, both men and women.
Yeah, we'll note on the men first, as we usually do here on the show. They finished 27th out of 51 teams at the Mid-East Regional held at Muhlenberg College. They were led by that junior class we've been talking about since their sophomore season last year. Jordan Payne, Nate Jesslin, Matt Durgan, Matt Cullum, they all finished in the scoring 5 for Waynesburg at the Mid-East Regionals. And then freshman Jack Coakley, who's been standing out, he finished 157th with a time of 27 minutes and 35 seconds. So that was impressive for him to score 3rd for Waynesburg at the Mid-East Regionals as a freshman too, so you can only go up from there. They tallied 765 points on the day. Carnegie Mellon took the title with 55 points. So all in all, a pretty impressive performance for them at the Mid-East Regionals. A lot of good competition there. So it's kind of that middle of the top of the pack is pretty much where you want to be, which is where they were. They didn't have anybody on their team that qualified for nationals, but that's a pretty tough task to achieve. But we did have Aubrey Wingard, who qualified for nationals, which you guys noted on a few times. So congratulations to her. And as for the women who she leads, they finished 13th out of the 49 teams at the Mid-East Regional. She led the charge, obviously. She was the PAC champion and placed 20th out of the 349 runners at the Mid-East Regional, so that's very impressive. And that her mark was good enough to qualify her for nationals, as we noted on. Junior Nicole Shelton was also placed for the Waynesburg. Sophomore Gloria Reed, and then Gianna Pugliano and Monica Kolensic also placed for them, which are two names that we haven't seen they weren't very consistent in the scoring 5 all season long, but they were able to get up there for Mid-East Regionals, which is pretty impressive for them, so something for them to be proud of. Waynesburg tallied 387 points to earn the 13th spot, and Johns Hopkins took home the team title. Catch Aubrey Wingard next week, November 23rd. She's at Louisville, Kentucky, representing Waynesburg in the national championship.
Well, thank you, Corey, for your expert analysis in cross country as usual. And when we come back on Jacket Sports Weekly, we'll have women's basketball with Matthew Mansfield. Stay tuned.
Piracy is a crime. If you see someone downloading copyrighted material without paying for it, then you should inform the authorities immediately. If you download any copyrighted material from the internet without paying for it, then you should go to jail.
The Waynesburg University women's basketball team lost on Tuesday against Hiram College 86-68. But joining us now on Jacket Sports Weekly to preview the upcoming games is our very own Matthew Mansfield. Matt, what would you like to see the team improve on here?
Obviously this last outing was not what they had hoped for, but I think one of the big takeaways is, no pun intended, Brooke Fuller had a rebound game. She had 3 rebounds versus Penn State Barron, and then she had 11 in the last game, so that was huge, and she's been averaging 15 points per game. And I think one of the keys for this team to succeed this season is going to be Brooke Fuller starting to score more and starting to rebound a lot better, and obviously that first game seems like it might just have been an outlier. So if Brooke Fuller can focus a little bit more on the rebounding, I think that's going to be one of the keys to them winning this upcoming week.
So you mentioned Brooke Fuller, Zoe Smith, also the second tallest girl on the team. Do you think they can work together to get rebounds, and obviously that'll help?
Yes, Smith actually in the game that Brooke Fuller didn't do as well the first game against Penn State Barron was the leading rebounder. So I think Smith seems like she's been a little more consistent on her rebounding. So I think overall that she was averaging 6 rebounds per game. Brooke Fuller is now at 7 after her 11 rebound performance on last Tuesday. So I think Smith and Fuller are going to make this team very dangerous down low whenever they're rebounding. And Brooke Fuller's been doing a lot better with offensive rebounding than she has been on the defensive side of things, which is one of those keys that's going to give them a lot of opportunities for second chance points. So that's going to be one of the things that can help them win the next 2 games they have coming up this week.
Speaking of those next 2 games, Case Western is one of them. What do you expect this next week?
I think one of the big keys for success against Case Western is going to be three-point shooting. Case Western is shooting 18% from three-point land this season, which is obviously not very good, and they've been allowing 25% of the threes that their opponents have taken to go in. So I think three-point shooting is going to be one of those things, and that's where Casey Castrol comes in. The last 2 years, they've had Aaron Joyce and then Haley Porter take over as the leading three-point scorers on the Waynesburg team. And it looks like Castrol's the next one to fit into that mold and be the leading three-point shooter. She's shooting over 40% from 3 currently throughout the season. So it's one of those things that if Castrol can start shooting well from 3 and maintain that throughout the season, that's going to get this team a lot of wins.
Now, Matt, how important do you think it is for some of these younger players to find their role on the team, like Anika Dansby and Zoe Smith and Allie Delaney? Because right now it looks like they're kind of trying to do too much, whereas they're not really following Coach Jones's system, and they're just trying to be very impactful in their first couple of games.
One of the big things that you can see out of these younger girls is that they're turning over the ball a good bit. This team is obviously through 2 games having an issue with how many turnovers they've had. So it's one of those things that if these girls can just kind of focus on playing their role on the team, and obviously it's hard to find your role so early in your career. It's been 2 games, so I think they have the entirety of the season to figure that out. And that's where girls like Brooke Fuller, Andrea Orlowski, and even Casey Castrol being on the team for over a year, it's going to be huge for them to kind of help those girls transition to the college level.
Now moving over to the men's basketball, they went 0-2 at the Greg Richards Memorial Classic in Meadville. Now we were joined by Tanner Saprosky. Tanner, what would you like to see the team improve on?
Since you did mention they went 0-2 in that tournament, one of the big things that stood out to me was just shooting their overall field goal percentage. Through 2 games, they shot 38%, which isn't terrible, but that first game they lost by 20. They only shot 26% from 3, and that's not, when you're playing at a high level of basketball, you need to make 3-point shots. And obviously their defense wasn't there either because they gave up 78 points the first game, then 82 the second. So I think it's a combination of making 3-point shots and defending the 3-point line when you're going against these other teams, because obviously losing by this big of margins, there's obviously the other teams outscoring you from 3.
So moving forward, Fredonia this week, what do you expect happening from there?
Well, in recent history, Waynesburg played them last year and won 81-78, so they put up a lot of points. Popek dropped 27 points, which he was the leading scorer last year. So I think as long as, and we saw in the second game Isaiah Alonso with his first career double-double, so I think he's starting to kind of fit into his role more on this team. So I think if he can play at the top of his ability, and Brennan Smith, he had 32 last game, which was basically half of Waynesburg's points. So I think if Smith, Popek, and Alonso can all play well together, they'll definitely have a good chance, not only in this next game, but the rest of the year going forward.
Now, Tanner, quickly, how noticeable are the growing pains from Coach Fusina's system and Coach Christner's system?
Well, obviously with Fusina, the new head coach, it's going to take some time. Any sport, any level of play, it's going to take some time to get used to a new head coach. And the basketball team, as we've mentioned earlier on the show, that they've had good chemistry. They're always on campus together. So I think as long as the team, they really like each other, they have good chemistry. So I think they just need to blend in with the coach more and kind of work hard in practice to figure out what exactly is going to work and what's not going to work. But, I mean, 2 games in the regular season, they weren't PAC games, so they still have time to figure things out.
All right, thank you, Tanner. And then when we come back on Jacket Sports Weekly, Caleb Yager will interview men's basketball player Cam Auld. Stay tuned.
Hello and welcome back to Jacket Sports Weekly on WCTV. Today we have Cam Auld, senior guard for the Waynesburg University men's basketball team. Cam, thanks for joining us today. So you guys played your first games at the Greg Richard Memorial Classic at the Allegheny College in Meadville. So how were those first 2 games at Meadville? Could you kind of take us a game-by-game breakdown a little bit?
Yeah, I think John Carroll, the first game, that was a team who was getting top 25 votes in Division III. So that was one that we knew was going to be a hard game, but we knew we could compete. We scouted them really well. But they're a good team. They have a lot of shooters, so that was kind of tough on us. And I know they went on a couple runs, and that gave them a big lead. So, I mean, it was a good, hard-fought game, but, I just think you ran into a team who was really talented, and that kind of ended, our game with them. But then, Allegheny, it's kind of hard to bounce back, 0-1, especially quick turnover, like 20 hours, I think we played later against Allegheny. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of a tough turnover, but they're a good team too. I think we played 2 really good teams, and I think it was, early in the year it's a learning experience, so you try to take as much away from those games as you can and move on.
So you say it was a great learning experience, even though it was kind of a hard struggle for you guys. It was a good learning experience to kind of get a feel for what you guys are going to be preparing for this next upcoming season. And so you guys have a different head coach this year with Mike Fusina, and you have the addition of 6'10", Isaiah Alonso. So how has that affected the team, game plan-wise or positioning for you guys?
I think mainly I would say just pregame, like our practices are way more intense than they've ever been. in regards to how Coach Vecina runs practice, and I think he has, his foot on the pedal, and we're trying to go, and I think that's good for us, because that's the type of team we want to be. We want to be hard-nosed, we want to be tough, and I think he's instilled that here, and I think he'll keep that going for as long as he is here. And I know bringing in Isaiah when he was down for a visit before we went to Ireland in the summer, he was open arms, he was so open with everybody, and, having him has been great off the court and then on the court. When you add a 6'9" guy, who can score and play defense, that's going to make an impact, regardless of how many minutes he plays or what else he does on the court. That 6'9" frame is going to be something that's going to terrorize other teams.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I'd say that. So with the addition of those guys on the team and going into the season, what are your expectations? What opponents are going to stick out to you guys this year?
I think every year it's kind of the same because, every time the preseason pool comes out, it's always St. Vincent's up there and Westminster's up there. And I know those two teams we definitely circle every year, especially Westminster since they knocked us out last year. We kind of want to get our revenge, or if you call it that, from that. And then, like always, W&J is another team that it's a rival, 15 miles, whatever, how many ever miles away it is. It's one of those games that you want to win and you prepare for more than any other team, I would say, just because that one means a little more than all the other ones do. So I would say those three teams are the ones that, we look forward to playing against the most.
Mm-hmm. So you guys are going to be playing Fredonia here pretty soon. You guys played them last year. You guys barely squeaked out a win, 81-78 in a close game. So what are you guys going to be doing to prepare for this game? Are there any players that stick out or anything like that?
I don't really think we get caught up in an individual player on an opponent team. I think Coach Vecina has made it clear that we're always going to prepare across the board, for every single guy who does play. And we're going to play our game regardless. We're not going to play into the hands of other teams. We're going to do what Waynesburg basketball does. And right now that's screening and finding our guys who can score and getting those guys open and getting them shots. And, me and Isaiah being the screeners we're going to pitch into, and that's kind of what we're going to do. And along with the bench guys who come in and play, they're going to fulfill their roles. So as long as everyone does their job, we don't see a problem with Fredonia.
Okay. And as a senior, what have you had to do to step up and kind of lead the team this year? What have you learned over the course of your 4 years here?
The guys who were here when I was younger, they kind of put the stones out for me, and I try to follow that lead. Not even just on the court, just being off the court. Leader, vocal leader, just being a guy who the young guys can go to for a conversation. But on the court, like I said, just being a communicator and doing what I do best. I'm not the guy who's going to score you 30 points or get 20 assists, but I'm going to chip in every aspect and help my team win in any way I can.
All right. That's going to wrap us for here. Thanks, Cam, for coming in today. Best of luck to you guys on the season. And when we return, the top 5 athletes of the week will be presented right here on Jacket Sports Weekly.
We're back for our final segment here on Jacket Sports Weekly for the week. And that is our top 5 athletes of the week. Riley, why don't you go first?
At number 5, I have Rocky McGeary. Went 2-0 on the week, picked up 2 major decision wins for the Yellow Jackets wrestling team. At number 4, I have Brooke Fuller, posted her 5th collegiate double-double. Just another solid performance from her. Number 3, from the wrestling team as well, I have Zach Mackel. Although he only went 1-1 at the Waynesburg Duels on Saturday, he did knock off an All-American in Messiah's Kevin Edwards. Number 2, I have Brennan Smith. Scored 32 points in the game against Allegheny for the basketball team, and just another great showing by him. And then at number 1, I have Aubrey Wingart, finishing 10th at the Mid-East Regionals and now going to Nationals. Just a great feat by her. Now on to you, Hugh.
For my top 5, I have one from each sport. Number 5, starting out with Justin Flack. He had 88 yards in the game against W&J. Number 4, Rocky McGeary. Riley, as you mentioned, he was on your top 5. He was 2-0 at the Waynesburg Duels. Number 3, Brendan Smith, 32 points against Allegheny on this past weekend. And number 2, as Riley mentioned, Brooke Fuller had that double-double. That double-double was against Hiram. And number 1, Aubrey Winger, 10th at regionals. She will be going to nationals. That will be this upcoming weekend. That's going to do it for us. For Riley, I'm Hugh O'Neill. Thanks for tuning in. Tune in next week for more Jacket Sports.
This has been a production of Waynesburg Community Television.